We're going to welcome up Ton Wilson and Jim Bender, who are going to be covering strategies. We're kind of going through this chronologically as far as how a contractor would tackle subcontracting. So obviously market research was first, and now we're going to talk about strategy. And let me just move on here to, again, Ton Wilson and Jim Bender. Ton, thanks so much for joining us. I know that you've been a presenter with us in other webinars in the past, and we're lucky to have you back today. So I'll let you take the floor and say what you need to say here.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, this is going to be a rapid fire type of presentation, but Ton Wilson here, president of Intellect. We do BD capture, proposal support, business strategy. We are your business strategist for our efforts. I'd like to say that, you know, we win SHIT here, so I'll keep it clean for the most part on this call, but really looking forward to speaking to you a little bit more about how to best subcontract, the strategies behind all of that, which is what we do a lot with our customers. We help facilitate teaming and business strategy support for major recompetes or even to unseat the incumbents. So I'll head it over to my co-presenter, Jim.
Great, Jim Bender, great to have you with us. You've presented many times with us, and I know you and I have done a couple joint presentations as well. So thanks for joining us today, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting me to this really all-star team of presenters on subcontracting. It's a very important part of becoming a successful contractor and maintaining your success. So I'm the principal of ZK Development Solutions. I've been doing this, I've been an independent consultant for about 10 years and in the federal contracting space for considerably longer than that. Right now, as a consultant, I work with various sized companies, from startups to mid-sized companies, on the whole aspect of the business development, capture, and proposal management cycle. And I'm very excited to talk about the importance of subcontracting. So let's jump right into the next slide, where we're going to talk about strategies today. And this will be tag team. So first, we want to talk a little bit. In order to have a good strategy, you got to have a reason to have partnerships. And Ton and I just want to discuss some of these reasons. Some of them may be obvious, maybe not so. I have a good friend of mine. He's a retired IT company executive. He sold out about 10 years ago to a big company. And his favorite saying was, your net worth is tied to the size of your network. That if you're not doing a lot of networking, like most, as a leader in your company, if you're not spending a lot of time on networking and teaming, you're not spending your time in the right place. Teaming gives you the opportunity to meet new people and learn more about new technologies or offerings, capabilities, and agencies that otherwise would be unknown to you. Government buyers like to encourage teaming because they know the mixtures of capabilities and experience brings them a better solution. So they like to see well-formed and logical teams, and it behooves you to spend time on making sure that you're doing that, so you're at the cutting edge of innovation and what you can provide to your customers. Companies often get asked to do things that are little or sometimes a great deal out of their core expertise area. And, you know, I've worked for big companies and I know that, hey, sure, I can figure out how to do this. I mean, I figured out how to do 5 other things and I can fake it till I make it. Find the right expert to put on as a consultant. But really, you're just allowing somebody to pay you to make mistakes, and the government can often see through that. And why do you want to go through the risk of trying to figure out something while you're under the pressure of deadlines and cost controls, when it's a whole lot easier to take on somebody to your team who is fully familiar with it and has already made the mistakes on somebody else's dime, so that they can perform to the highest possibility. So If you, yeah, so there's a lot of risk in trying to fake it till you make it. We all indulge in it from time to time, but it's a lot better to expand your network. Secondly, you're going to fuel your business growth by tapping into new customers, capabilities, and contract vehicles. This was discussed in the last presentation a great deal. I do a lot of market research for companies where I go through FBDS data and I tell them, okay, here's the fraction of your offering that's open market like SAM or POs or bilateral agreements, and here's how much of it's going through vehicles. And a lot of times, I mean, IT, you know, it's all getting sopped up by the big GWACs and the IT vehicles, whether they're agency specific or not. There's very little on the open market, but it's for other offerings. I'm working with somebody right now who does deaf services like signing and remote interpretation. And I'm finding that 80% of that is going through the GSA schedule, either as delivery orders through GSA or through contracting mechanism that are competed on GSA. So fortunately, they're working with Jennifer to get on that schedule because that's where all the sales are happening. And if you're just depending on SAM, they just won't see it because you'll never see the solicitations. So learning about new capabilities and customers expands your ability to take on different kinds of projects, especially the smaller companies. I think I've noticed that the sign of a mature company is a tight capability statement. There are so many newbies that, you know, I did cybersecurity when I was in high school, so they put it on their capability statements. I'm only exaggerating a little bit, but people will say that they can do janitorial services, software development, and they also can do construction. And when people look at a capability statement like that, they say, well, what do you really do? What are you really good at? And it also makes it hard for you to be remembered. So when you just focus on the things that you're really good at and the agencies that you're really good at, and take on team members to do that, you're going to have a much higher success rates. And the reality is that you can only do a few things unless you have a strong network of partners. If you've done the research that was talked about previously, you'll know how your service offering is being purchased and how it's bundled together with other offerings. And you'll know how to, you'll have a roadmap for the type of partners that you want to pursue. As has been stated already, having visibility into contract vehicles is critical to knowing how your service is purchased and what the government values in its purchase decisions. So making sure you have a vehicle strategy is very important. Finally, I want to talk about a little bit about risk. Taking on a big requirement all by yourself has a lot of risk involved. There's a lot of investment for BD and proposal work that maybe you don't want to take on by yourself. So the best teaming relations is have clear reasons for being and well-defined swim lanes for each partner. And these strong teaming relationships make full use of the resources, skills, and past performance of each teaming partner. So through many, you become one offerer to the government. Good teaming partners yield the scope that they can probably do to the stronger partner who can do it best. Winning teams are formed after an honest and transparent discussion of each member's strengths and weaknesses, and have a joint discussion of the requirements of the opportunity they are pursuing to create the best team and the best arrangement of resources across the teams to offer to the government. And I'll turn it over to Tan now to talk about filling performance and experience gaps.
Great, thanks, Jim. So this is Tan again. I just wanted to kind of pull the thread a little bit regarding the performance and experience gaps. So, you know, as we've talked multiple times here, one of the strategies for that is definitely to fill in some gaps. And I think this is incredibly critical for some of the scorecards and larger bid type of efforts, right? So I'll say the much dreaded B word, like when you see large opportunities that are being bundled, smaller contracts that are being consolidated, there's a lot of competitive landscape for who's going to be bidding on these opportunities. And so actually, Jennifer, I think the slides advanced here. We need to go back to the first one. So, for these types of larger bundled and scorecards opportunities, sometimes teaming either in a prime sub relationship or a joint venture or a mentor protege relationship, which will be discussed here later on in this session, that teaming construct will really help kind of define how and which opportunities you're going to be bidding on, right? So with that said, though, there is some level of competition that you do want to take off the street. So a teaming strategy that I like to use a lot is, if you can't beat them, join them. And the larges do this really well. You'll see the large SIs, prime one, they'll sub to that prime on another. And then in the next bid, they'll flip the relationship. So, and a lot of the smalls do this really well too. Those that have developed very strategic teaming relationships instead of teaming for convenience. And so a lot of times I like to kind of discuss teaming as terms of like a relationship, right? So I have a presentation on Tinder teaming, right? In this age, do you swipe left or do you swipe right on a team member? And again, it all kind of depends, but at the same time, it's kind of a catch-22 when you team, because when you team, you are sharing some incredibly, intimate type of information, knowledge, insights. So not only can you gain insights from your teaming partner on either a program, a customer, whatever it might be from other members, you're also expected to kind of convey your insights too, to help increase your probability of winning on that effort. So maintaining, that separation and, what do we share, what don't we share is really kind of an ongoing challenge to teaming. So I think we've talked a lot about, the great sides of teaming, but there is a really, a cautious side to teaming that you really do have to be careful with regarding who you choose and, who participates on your team and really how much information you do share with them. But in all practical matters, though, when it comes down to it, you're able to really bid on a much larger number of opportunities and be able to expose to a number of other customers that maybe you as a lone bidder would not be able to capitalize on. So, even large businesses don't have an unlimited amount of BMP funds. Small and mid-tier companies have even more limited types of funds to go after a number of bids. So teaming allows you to do more with less, besides all the other obvious things that we've discussed, which is lowering your risk in the process. So with that, we'll go on to like the common pitfalls, which I think everyone needs to be kind of concerned with. Some of these are, obvious, and some of them are things that you may not have considered. So Jim, you want to take it?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I've been in federal contracting for more than 25 years, and I've had more teams than I can care to count. And rarely have I worked in a team where one of the partners is outright dishonest. But we all practice the art of stretching the truth or making some past performance sound a little bit more than what it actually was. So this is why, especially when you're with a new teammate, you want things to go well, but somebody needs to be asking the hard questions about, well, what did you really do? Otherwise, you're going to run into problems with the review team, and everybody's going to lose. So you want to be ready to accept that somebody is being honest, but confirm that you understand what honesty is about. So extensive experience is a term of art that's very flexible. So what does that exactly mean? How many people were on the job? How many years have you been doing it with what agencies? If they say they are very familiar with a certain process or technology, have them explain explain it in a way that you can understand that sounds convincing. For instance, everybody who's in IT that does websites will say they do 508 compliance. Well, so what is your process for doing 508 compliance? And is that process externally verified or certified? And what is your quality control process for that? Then compare what they tell you with what you can find out from somebody who's an expert in the field or from publicly available resources that can be trusted to know how the process should work. And I'll say this about it. I recently had somebody who had a subcontractor that they were counting on for an important past performance. And I told her, well, they're going to be checking their CPARs, so you better demand to look at them. And once you're under a teaming agreement situation, and if the CPARs of your teammate is critical, it's reasonable, especially if you're the prime contract, it's reasonable to ask to look at that to just make sure what they're saying is true. And other ways that you can check up on our company are just a simple Google search to see, or a search to see if there's any pending judgments against them, either financial or contract defaults or anything like that. Next, I want to talk about the ability to clearly articulate your company's key differentiators. I am mystified at how many clients, when I ask them, okay, well, what makes you different? I can't get a coherent answer. Now, there's a lot to be said for relationships and being able to create an air of trust around you, but when it comes down to it, you got to be able to explain to me in an elevator pitch why I want to buy from you for somebody that's somebody else. Yes, sometimes it can be abstract, but you need to have, like, here are the 5 points why my company is so great. Is it we are fast? Is it we are meticulous? Is it because we are cheap? I've got a client right now who just came right out and told me, I've seen the prices of my competitors and I can undercut them by 20%. I said, sweet. I know how we're going to win business here, because price is always an issue. So there's going to be a competitive procurement with a written submission. The team will have to be able to explain why they're superior, why they are best choice among competing offers. And this, of course, is a team effort, so it's a combination of all your competitive offerings. And through market research and through your discussions with government agency personnel, competitors, and teammates, you should know how you compare with the other people in your space. And you should know how the client defines what good is, because it may not be the way you do, and speak their language about it. So, one thing, it's easy to get together with teammates, go to a proposal outline and say, okay, here are the 3 reasons we're going to win. But it's worth the time to really think it through, to look dispassionately at all the evidence you have in the written RFP, as well as intel that you've gathered from public sources or from relationships, to really think about, well, who are the people we're stacking up against, and how are we going to clearly explain to the client we're better than them? So I'm going to turn this back over to Tan to talk about the next bullet point.
So let's be a little practical about this, right? So let's take it down to the tactical level with the teaming partners' qualifications capabilities. So I'm truly the hugest advocate for trust but verify. I trust no one and I verify everything. Because, you know, a lot of times the initial teaming discussions are done at the BD level, right? Again, not that I don't trust BD professionals, but they're there to sell. And so they're selling the good side to their abilities. Sometimes they're stretching the good sides of their abilities. So, you know, a really good BD capture professional is going to know how to map the qualifications and the requirements against each of the opportunities. And so, you know, this is why, you know, my biggest thing is I think the capture professionals are the one people who are really not appreciated, and you can see a good capture professional by the quality of vetting that they've done on an opportunity to determine whether or not they do have the past performance and the abilities. And so you'd be surprised when you look at a capabilities matrix and you're doing your gate review, how often you're finding holes or blowing holes through some of those requirements and some of those abilities because they just are not clearly documented. So you need to be able to kind of document the prerequisite experience and meet at least a minimum set of requirements before you can even determine, you know, why your team, why are you going to beat the incumbent, or why are you going to beat the, you know, the other competitors out there. With that said, though, you really need to kind of determine what are going to be your deal breakers, right? You can't team with everybody. Not everyone you're going to bet you're going to team with, and that's okay, right? You know, like you need to kind of know whether or not you're going to go on that second date. So, like, we've had drinks, we've kind of danced around a little bit, and now it's coming down to, you know, do I really want to bring you home and introduce you to the parents? And so, what are your deal breakers? And there's so many different deal breakers that could be out there. It needs to be determined, you know, predominantly on, do they bring value to your bid, to your team? Are you just teaming for convenience? Are you teaming because you just need a big name on the contract, on your proposal? And that's okay too, right? So sometimes you name drop, sometimes you need to have that one team member in order for you to have street cred with the customer. And so that might be a strategy for that. But, you know, if they're not bringing any value and if you don't see the reason for it, then they shouldn't be part of your team, at least not for that opportunity. The other thing too is, organizationally speaking, they need to align with your organization. Do they fit? Do both of you fit together? You know, can you work together cooperatively? Do you present a united front? Is there a uneven relationship where one seems to overpower the other? And this is really especially important for you to evaluate and consider, especially if you're a small business and you're teaming with another business who is maybe a lot more mature, either a larger business. You know, sometimes larger and more experienced companies will come in and try to kind of take over, and you're the small business prime. So you need to kind of assert yourself and know where to draw that line in the sand, and to kind of set that precedence and that those terms and that cadence early in the relationship. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of a precursor to potential risk and potential challenges and obstacles that you're going to be facing down the line on the execution side. So, you know, like that last second to last bullet about poor performing team members, I evaluate this, and you can see a lot of this at the very onset of when you team, right? So you team initially for a specific opportunity. In that proposal process, you can tell a lot about a potential teaming member and how they're going to, you know, how they're going to operate post-award. And so if you've got a team member who is always late, is unresponsive, is dismissive, is rude, that just does not reflect and present themselves well or in a professional manner, you may want to think twice about that. And I've kicked off several subcontractors on my bid teams for that performance issue. And I've advised my client, I don't care what you think, this is a red flag and you need to cut. You need to cut them now. Otherwise, it's going to be a train wreck, and it's going to impact your performance on your contract, which will impact your reputation with the customer and potentially impact your CPARs and your performance ratings. And so winning the contract is one thing, properly and better performing on the contract is another. And so, you need to kind of know and kind of read the tea leaves a little bit early in the relationship as to whether or not that's going to be, an impact or an area of concern. And on the last point, because I know that we're running tight here and we want to move to some key takeaways, is that waiting too late, right? I get questions a lot about when should we team, or, I get a call and we're starting a bid and they're still finalizing teaming and they're still figuring out where their gap assessments are. Sometimes teaming too late is, that's never a good recipe for success. And so, like other of my colleagues have mentioned before, you can never begin the discussions on teaming too early. I think some of the best teams that are out there are done without an opportunity, that are done in a very organic way that is not a transaction. And so the strategic, longer term type of courting, you're dating for a longer period of time, you're getting to know each other, you're developing a cadence and a rapport, those tend to work really well. And so, sometimes post-award teaming does work, a lot of times it doesn't. And it will cause you to lose time in your response, and you will struggle. It is going to be very transparent in your final work product. So with that, I think we'll move on to our last slide, which are our common key takeaways and advice to strategic teaming. Jim?
Yeah, nothing could be more important in teaming than doing your homework and getting out in front of opportunities. Because as Ton just said, time is everything. Time is really underrated in calculating this mystical P-win that we talk about. Because if you're just getting in late to the game, the winning teams are already formed. Because the people who are most likely positioned to win something are the ones who have been thinking about it for a long time and have done their homework. They've been watching for the contract that's expiring. They've been watching the pre-solicitation notices, and they jump on it then because it's a priority for them, and they're committing their resources because they know they can win. There's just a great deal of public information out there to help you to respond to any solicitation. We've talked about the tons of data on FBDS. I'm really surprised at how easy it is to find out information about incumbent contractors. An incumbent contractor is not eligible to bid. Boy, that's always a red flag. And don't you love to see that when they've sized out of the category and now it's up for recompete? And at best, they're going to be a subcontractor. That, or if it's put on a vehicle that they're not on, you say, wow, why did the government do that? There must be some problem there and they don't want them to bid on it. That's fairly rare, but it does happen once in a while. Make use of the SBA small business database. They will tell you what the contractors are asserting to the Small Business Administration about their size and if they're large or small in a given NAICS code. You can also always find a lot of teaming partner information by looking for similar requirements in the same agency that have been awarded through the FBDS data. It's important to believe in your company. It's important to be gung-ho about your chances, but it's also important to have a fisheye once in a while, to look sideways at something and say, we really think this could happen, but are we going to be able to convince the government of that? You have to be, you have to pull out all the stops, and you have to motivate your team, and you have to explain to them, yeah, we're going to win this in order to get them to do their all. But have you thought about doing, if you are concerned about your internal team having the objectivity, have you thought about bringing in an outside expert, a so-called black hat review, where you bring in an outsider to look at your strategy and see if it passes the laugh test? And remember, you might have a great offerer, but are you going to be the best offerer that can beat out the known competition? And I know we're running out of time, and I don't want to chew up my partner's last little bit, but do be willing to start out small and work your way up the value ladder when selling a new offering or entering a customer space, because realistically, nobody's going to give you the chance to work on a big one until you've established yourself. Tan, talk about teaming is not a sign of weakness.
Yep, no, and exactly. So, a lot of people want to prime. I hear it all the time, but, priming is, and teaming is not a sign of weakness. Whether or not you're a sub on it, it doesn't make your team weaker because you bring on other subcontractors. And in some regards, in some opportunities, it's required, it's requested, and the customer is actually looking for it. So really kind of read the tea leaves and the opportunities, because, teaming on some opportunities could be and one of your win themes for that. So, but again, like 49% of something is better than 0% of anything. So again, you do what you need to do to get on the team and to win, new work. But do it when it really makes sense though, right? And so be very deliberate in your teaming decisions. Because it may not be the best either for you or that situation at that time. And to close it out though, is to always kind of be wary, protect yourselves. Protect yourselves on the opportunities. I'm a huge advocate of being very clear on work share, be very clear of your swim zones, especially if it's a large team. Really fight for your own best interest and for your percentage and part of it. And if you do fight and you say that you're able to provide and you're going to support it, then show up, right? Show up for everything. Show up for calls, show up for data calls, be responsive, because we all like to team with the last person that we spoke with. And so, don't always go to someone or email someone or tag them on LinkedIn or something because you want something from them. Do it because if it helps them, it's going to help you. And people remember people who help them either accomplish something or provide information or intel without being asked for it. So share, be deliberate, and always be proactive in your approach to teaming. And I think, what goes around comes around. And so the universe will give back what you put out there. And so I think with that, Jennifer, that pretty much concludes our discussions on strategies for teaming.
Tan and Jim, that was awesome. I loved it. And you guys finished right on time. So